Well, hello everybody. This is Martin Cordner. I hope you found yourself on facebook.com/Cordner Music. And this is our fortnightly, I should say, live stream. And as you can see, I've got a very special guest with us today in the shape and form of Yvonne Field. And Yvonne, in case you don't know, is a very well-known songwriter within the Salvation Army. And really tonight, our idea is to talk about music and to talk about faith. And maybe we'll talk about how those two things can go together as well. I, of course, am more known for the brass band end of things, but it's going to be really wonderful tonight to bring these two ends of the spectrum together and talk about their shared values and how music can work together really well in the Salvation Army. So good to have you here, everyone. Good to have you here, Yvonne. I'm just going to say to everyone who's watching, we do want to take your questions tonight. So 2 weeks ago, when Beth Cooper was chatting with me, I called out the name of every single person who tuned in, and I had a thought afterwards that if some people tuned in by accident, they might not really have wanted their name called out. So I'm not going to call out anybody's names tonight, unless you leave us a comment. So if you say hi in the comments, then we'll say hello to you. And if you have a question, we'd really love to take that question from you. So the idea is I'm going to ask Yvonne a few things. She's going to ask me a few things. And hopefully, as we say, some of you guys have got questions as well. So welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you, Martin.
Great to see you looking as lovely as you always do.
Oh, you flatterer.
Should we just move on? So we're here chatting tonight, and we're in the middle of or coming out of, shall we say, lockdown. How's lockdown been for you and you and your husband and your family? How's everyone keeping?
I think we've coped pretty well, actually. We've been very sensible, as you're supposed to do. We found we quickly settled into a new routine. In the first week of lockdown, we did frantic cleaning, and we're going to be decorating and all sorts of things. The decorating still hasn't happened, but we settled into a new routine. To be honest, we just took a positive view of it. You know, this is how life is. We've got to make the best of it. Fortunately, our daughter lives about 3 or 4 minutes away from us, around the other side of our estate. Yes. So she's been an absolute angel and done food shopping for us, and still insists on doing it. She doesn't want her mum and dad going in the shop or anything.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, and Andrew lives in Manchester, which is not too far away, and the grandchildren are not too far away. So we've just kept in touch, as you do, on WhatsApp and message and phone and what have you.
Yes.
So it's been okay, and we've got wonderful neighbours. We really have. So yeah, it's been okay. Yeah.
Good on you. And you know, as I was just saying a minute ago, most of us know you through your songs, Yvonne. So does lockdown provide a songwriter with more opportunity for writing, or is it creativity stifled, or how have you found songwriting?
No, it's been a creative time, actually. To be honest, it's been almost a little bit of a wake-up call, because as you know, I've sort of got another life at the stables at the yard, and I'd spent a lot of time there. And so being on lockdown, wasn't able to go at all for about 10 weeks. And the creative side has really started again. So I've written 2 brand new songs. Got another one that's just emerging, and our songster core pianist Nick Crowhurst at Sale, he's really into the technical side of music with sequences and all sorts of sounds. Yeah. So he decided that he wanted to have a go at writing something. So he created this piece of music on his piano and sequencer and all different layers of sounds, and then put it into Sibelius. So I've been mentoring him, and as this song is still developing, he's got a real sense of humor. At the beginning, he said, "I don't know what to call it, so we call it Dunno." So we're on Dunno version 10 at the moment.
Has the song, has it got words as well as music?
No, the email said, I need some words. Do you know anybody who's a lyricist? Right, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But he's put a couple of words down for the end chorus, so he's had some ideas. So it's a bit of a collaboration, but it's been most enjoyable because it's a different way now of doing music.
Yeah, of
It
course.
benefited us both, to be honest. So yeah, creativity has come to the fore again.
Cool, cool. Well, look, this is maybe the first time some of our viewers tonight have maybe seen or heard of you. You know, we've seen a name on the page, but to see your face and to hear your voice might be a first time for some people here. Excuse me. So I'm just wondering if you would introduce yourself, really, you know, and just give us a little bit of the Yvonne Field story. You know, like how did what was life like for you when you were young, and what was it that sort of propelled you into music? So could you give us a little flavor about how you got into music making, something about your upbringing?
Yeah, my upbringing, my mum and dad were part of the choir at Cambridge Citadel, which you may know
Hallelujah.
it. Yes,
Yes,
you may
know that
know it.
one.
Yes, yes.
Great.
So that's where I grew up. Was at Cambridge till I got married. So I was part of the music scene, but nothing to do with writing at all. Always enjoyed the music ministry at the corps, because I had good sections, as you still do at Cambridge. And then we got married and moved down to Devon. And as sometimes happens, we drifted away and we didn't go to the army at all, didn't go to church for a few years. Sorry, my husband's 6 years. Yes, we were completely away from the army. And then moved to Northampton, where our children were born. And when our daughter was born, second baby, I'd just come out of hospital and looked out the window to see the little silver car draw up outside our house. And I remember saying to Ian, "Oh no, it's a Salvation Army officer." And he called, knocked to the door, just said, "I hear that you have connections with the army and you're in town. You've just had a baby, just wanted to say congratulations and hello." And he did this kind of visits for quite a few weeks. And eventually I said, "For goodness sake, come in and have a cup of tea." And that relationship was established. And then I started going to the home league, would you believe?
Gosh, you must have been too young for that, Yvonne.
Well, I was with another friend who had a little one, and the hall was full of old ladies, but it was like having a hall full of grandmas. They were just absolutely loved us. Yeah. And then I started going to the Sunday evening meeting, and Ian stayed at home with the kids babysitting because he didn't want to know at all. And one Sunday night, I made my decision and really came to faith for the first time. And then I remember coming home and having to tell my husband, who wasn't interested, what had happened. And he never said a word. Talk about the elephant in the room. Okay. It was a mighty big elephant, I tell you.
Right.
But things moved on, and, you know, God has a wonderful way of working, because it wasn't long before I felt real being compelled to think about committing my life as an officer, but I didn't understand how that was going to work because my husband didn't even want to go to the meetings. But this lovely corps officer established a friendship relationship with my husband. And one day, because Ian was into photography, so he had to go to Lincoln on business. And he happened to say to Major David Chislett, "Do you want to come and we'll take some photographs?" Which they did. And on the way back, Major David had a captive audience and says to Ian, "Now, what about it, son?" So Ian really became a Christian in the car on the way back from Peterborough.
Wow.
And then, came home from work one day and he just said, "I think we need to do something more with our lives." And that was it. And then we went into training in 79 with our two little ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 2 corps in London, Archway and Harlesden, then back on the staff of the training college, then up to Sale, and we're still in this part of the world. Okay,
so yeah, and what a lovely part of the world as well. We'll get back to how we met, because we met in your part of the world, didn't we? But what about the music side of things, though, Yvonne? Were you always writing stuff, or how did you get started?
No, I didn't start writing till I think it was late 30s, almost 40, when we were on the staff of the college. I was talking about it in the interview last night. It was in the October, and Colonel Norman Howe was the principal. And one Monday afternoon, he called all the staff together to pray with us about the commissioning, which was to take place the following May. And he just prayed over the staff that the Lord would release gifts and skills amongst us. And then a few days later, doing my hair in front of the mirror one morning, a little melody came through my mind, and some words, Christmas words, never written anything in my life before. So I just scrawled it down the best way I could and showed it to Norman, and he sent me a memo which still remains precious because it keeps me very grounded, saying, "We thank God for this new song. Who knows, it may be the start of a new ministry." And within other members of staff, gifts and skills and all sorts of things were released. So it was a very significant time. So, and that was the first time I'd written anything at all. Just literally came through his prayer.
Yeah. Excuse me. So, but you obviously you were skilled at playing the piano, though, right, Yvonne? So how did you learn the piano? When did that happen for you?
Oh, just as a child. I remember watching my mum, because my mum was one of these pianists who could play just about anything by ear. And I can remember watching her play and listening. And about the age of 7, I was desperate to have piano lessons. So my mum and dad didn't have much money, scrimped and saved, and I had my lessons, and I did my 8 grades of piano, but I didn't go any further than that. So everything I've learned since then has been through personal study, listening to how other people write, just learning as I go along. Yeah.
You've been fanning into flame the gift then. That's really what gifts
Yes.
That's how you develop a gift, isn't it? I always think if you see somebody at the peak of their talent, using their gift, you can be sure of 2 things. Number 1, God gave them the gift, but number 2, they had to put some work into it.
Oh yes.
People aren't just born, or very rarely, shall we say, are people born where they can just from birth write music or sculpt or paint or whatever. But,
I mean, you just said to me that we met up here when you and Leanne were at Stockport Heaton Norris. You probably don't remember. I knew you when your mum and dad were at Luton, and we were at, I think we were at Archway. And
right, yeah,
I met you. It's only a couple of times when you were a kid. So I've actually known you quite a long time, Martin.
Well, what about that, everybody? I better be careful what I say now, because this lady knows more about me than I thought she did. Yvonne, we'll just stop for a second and just say to everyone watching, we're glad that you've joined, everyone. This is Yvonne and I just chatting about faith and music within our part of the Christian denomination, which is the Salvation Army. And we're glad that you're joining us tonight. If you have a question for Yvonne, or a question for me, or a question about anything you can think of, really, we'll do our best. If we can't answer, we might know a man who can, but type it in and we'll say hello to you. So if you leave a comment, we'll give you a shout out. So we've had a couple of comments here. We've got Thomas Quick who says greetings from Canada. Glad you're here, Tom. Thank you very much for joining us. And Viewer Railton, hi Major, greetings from Kinshasa, DRC. That's a lovely country. I've been there, and that's a story for another day, but I did a music camp out there with a couple of guys from Northern Ireland. We had a wonderful time in Kinshasa. So great to see you, Boya. Glad that you're here. So let's get to what I thought was how we first met then, Yvonne, because you've thrown that one out already, because it wasn't where we first met, but I thought we first met in Stockport. So do you want to tell that story?
Well, we were attending the Salvation Army at Stockport Heaton Norris Corps, and young lieutenants were appointed, and it was Martin and Leanne Cordner. That was before you had the boys.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so that's where we met. Was it your first appointment, Martin?
Yeah, straight out of college, so we knew nothing and thought we knew everything. That's, it was our first appointment, and on our welcome Sunday, Yvonne, would you have been playing the piano, do you think? Is that
yes, I was. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, core pianist, and Ian sometimes played accompanied on the keyboard as well. A
Oh,
small,
yeah.
yeah, small core, but they're lovely, lovely
It was
people.
a lovely fellowship, and we had a little worship team as well.
That's
So we
right.
had keyboard, drum kit, and you were
Yeah,
on the piano.
that's right.
And then we
Stephen,
had, I don't know how we fitted it all in the one corner, but it was a very small corner. But we had a piano, a keyboard, a drum kit, probably a bass guitar.
yeah,
Stephen used to play
he
bass guitar,
did.
I
Yes,
remember. And
yes,
then we had the computer as well for the PowerPoint slides, all in
that's
that
right. With
same
the other
corner.
Stephen, yeah,
Yeah, that's right. It
all
was,
crammed in the corner.
when you think about it, for the year 2002, that
Mm.
was probably, we were quite cutting edge there with all of that technology, weren't we?
Yes,
I
yeah,
remember the
yeah,
projector screen and everything had just recently gone up before we arrived, so
yeah.
it was quite, these were just sort of coming in at that time, weren't they? I think.
Yes. Oh, yes, they
Um,
were. Yeah, for a small core, we did pretty well actually, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah,
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think it was this kind of core as well where you could try things out and have a go at all sorts of different things.
That's
So
right. Yeah, we had
yeah,
great relations with the local churches there as well,
yeah,
and we always, in your ministry, you look back, and most of the time you look back in fondness. It has to be said about how blessed you are. Sometimes you have a couple of memories that you'd rather not have, but
yeah,
for us at Stockport, there aren't really any memories like that. It was a wonderful. And it was a very short time. It was a wonderful appointment. It was a very short appointment because we only stayed 2 years.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we only stayed 2 years because the call came from on high that we were
yeah.
needed elsewhere or whatever.
That's right.
But it
Yeah,
was a real heart wrench for us to have to leave. And by the
yeah.
way, everybody, imagine going to your first appointment and your core pianist is Yvonne Field. That's pretty good, isn't it? So we thought we'd really landed on our feet there.
Oh
So
my goodness.
um, Leanne has just left a comment, Yvonne, which just says, and we were blessed to have you as part of our congregation. You were fantastic encouragers to us. Yeah, you were.
Oh,
You and
thank
Ian
you,
were.
Leanne. Thank you.
Yeah, and it was good. And Ian was part of the leadership team at that time, I think, in the core. And so you were
Yeah.
both able to speak into our ministry and help us along, which we really appreciated.
Oh, it's
Right then,
amazing.
so I think I've interrogated you enough, Yvonne. It might be nice. You can ask me a few things, and
Yes.
then
Well,
we'll see if any of our viewers. Don't forget, everybody, if you're watching, type us a comment and say hi, and we'll give you a shout out. And if you have a question for Yvonne or me, then type it as a comment, and we'll get to that in just a few minutes. All right, then,
well,
Yvonne.
I've been looking at some of your stuff on YouTube, and you don't write easy music, Martin, do you?
No, well, I think I've for some reason written music at both ends of the spectrum, but not really in the middle.
Mm,
Because being part of the staff band where Steve would ask for music for the staff band, I wrote a lot of music at that kind of level. But also I've spent a lot of my younger years at smaller core where we've had small bands. And so
sure.
I felt really passionate about writing for smaller groups. So I've written a lot for the Unity series, which is the
Right.
smallest size ensemble we publish for in the UK. And I've written at the other end for the ISB, but I haven't really written very much mainstream
Yeah.
stuff.
It
But
is. It's just the big
yeah,
stuff that gets on YouTube, doesn't it? But I've been
yeah,
fascinated
probably.
I have been fascinated by some of the titles of your pieces because they're not your sort of regular brass band piece titles. So you've got sort of Fusion and Flashpoint and Escape Velocity. I mean, they're very imaginative, Martin.
They're just
They must
stolen
have
from
a
the
backstory.
scientific world, really, aren't they? That's. I mean, I've always felt that I didn't really. If you go into WH Smith's at the airport and you're looking for a book to buy, you
Yeah,
do judge the book by its cover, don't you? I mean,
yeah,
the saying is never judge a book by its cover, and I'm always interested in the cover and what's written on the back and the artwork, and that's a big factor in what would make me buy a book. So when I think about a piece of music, when I'm writing the music, I often think of an image as well. And so for a lot of my pieces, I've done some artwork and put the title on because I'm imagining it like a book cover that might attract someone. And I
yeah,
think we have to be imaginative with our titles. For speaking from the brass end of things, when Salvation Army brass music sometimes might end up outside of the Salvation Army, I want the titles to be the thing that makes the person want to open the book and
yeah.
maybe be interested.
Mm.
So yeah, I think fusion was just that scientific word that was in my mind at the time, because I had based that piece of work on Albert Osborne's "I Know Thee Who Thou Art," and the second verse, I think it is, "My name is joined with thine," and the whole piece of music is about us arriving in eternity. So fusion seemed to be a good word for that. Escape Velocity is the piece of music before fusion, which is all about trying how we want to sometimes escape from the world, you know, because of the stresses and the pressures, and I think it draws on the Hillsong song "And I Will Run to You." That's the one. I couldn't think of its name. And so there's this longing in each of us, isn't there, to be find our rest in God. And that's why I thought Escape Velocity was a good title. So I hope that there's something that makes people interested in what the piece might be about. And I'm never gonna, I don't think, write a piece called "Washed in the Blood of the Lamb," or you know, something that's just overtly religious. That might potentially put somebody off, I guess. But and you've done the same, though, you know, like "Under His Wings" is not overtly religious, but it's sort of it's a title that makes me think, well, I wonder what the message of that song is about. So I think you've done it too, and maybe maybe that's something that we need to be doing. That's
I find myself as well, some of my songs, they're sort of like the titles are part of a sentence, like "to you" or something, ... I tend to do that with one or two of my titles as well.
Right.
Which is picking up either the final phrase or a key phrase from a song, just like you, which really depicts what the essence of the song is about. So in a similar vein. But when you were writing sort of like a big complex piece of brass music, I mean, in your mind, tell me, do you sort of hear the whole thing, or how on earth do you start to write? Well, I'll preface that. I remember when we were at Heaton Norris with you, you said to me once one day, "I don't know how you can write a piece of music and just confine it to, say, 4 staves, 2 vocal and 2 piano." And I said to you, "I don't know how you can write for a brass band with a whole page full of staves." So do you hear it? How do you start to write a piece that's so complex, really?
Well, I guess the complex pieces are probably the longer pieces. I don't know. I've spoken about this with different people before, but I think I've been a victim, or probably brought it on myself more than was a victim of the Sibelius software phenomenon that came around about the year 2000. I bought Sibelius 1.2 or whatever, 1.1. It was like pretty much the first version. When you're presented with a computer program that will play anything you put in, it's so much of a temptation to fill the page with notes, because the computer will play it back and it'll sound amazing, you know, or the technique of the computers can't be matched, can't be rivaled. But the danger with that is you have too much going on. And I think a lot of my pieces from that kind of era are too much hard work, to be honest with you. And I probably could have accomplished the same thing with 25% of the notes. So I think as you go, what I've been learning as I develop as a composer, and I'm still learning, by the way, as I'm sure you are, is that less is more.
Yes, absolutely.
And part of what makes, let's say, Call of the Righteous so appealing to people is because it has great tunes and a great message. But actually, most bands could probably have a go at playing it. So in terms of brass music, if you're a composer and you're writing stuff that bands just might not be able to touch, what's the point? You know, so that's something that I've had to learn over the years. I've forgotten what your question was.
Well, do you hear the whole piece in your mind?
The quick answer to that is no, I don't. I have a rough idea, and if somebody says it's a commission and they say we've got an opening of our new hall or something, you have a template in mind of what you need to produce. You know, it could be a march, and if it's going to be a march, you need 2 tunes probably. So it sort of sorts itself out in that way. But what I have to do in terms of inspiration is capture ideas when they come. So a couple of weeks ago, I was laughing about this with Beth when I was talking to her, but do I get inspiration stood at the bus stop? Well, yes, I do. You know, I get inspiration in all kinds of places, and the challenge for me is writing that down as soon as I can. So I use my phone to capture I sing into my phone sometimes, or when I get home, put it down. And so I've got like a folder on my computer full of just ideas,
Yeah.
and I would go to that. And a bigger piece is 9 times out of 10 for me, um, drawing on ideas and inspiration that I've had before. I can't get the whole piece in one go. I'm
Yeah.
sure there are geniuses out there that can, but for me, it has to be woven together and constructed piece by
Yeah.
piece.
Similar here as well. And
Right.
hearing you say less is more, I've gone through that phase as well. As my skill increased and developed, I
Yeah.
found myself writing more involved pieces, I think you could say. And
Yeah.
one day, I remember specifically one day, I'd got this piece, this song that I was going through and doing the accompaniment, and there was something about it that just didn't quite click. And I let it rest for a few days and then came back to it and pared it right down, simplified it, and it worked. And I think that that's quite a discipline as well, to learn to write less so the piece of music says more. So yeah, so I've been through that stage as well.
Yvonne,
Yeah.
that's, you're just making me remember that Len Ballantyne said something about that. I can remember reading an article where he said the discipline it requires to rub out that one note is tremendous, because it came from your heart, didn't it? It came
Yeah.
from a creative place. And quite often, especially when you're younger, I think you want to just put it all down because you're excited about it. But you're right, discipline is the right word. It takes a tremendous amount to erase those notes,
Yes. Yes.
and leave it looking leaner and slimmer, but hopefully more effective.
Yeah, and I've actually cut some bars out and kept them. My file in the computer is melting pot, and that those few bars have gone in there, and then they've
Yeah.
probably found a life in another song a bit later on. Yeah, but it's quite a discipline. And also, I think if you're writing in a simpler way, the challenge then is to still make the music interesting, and particularly in vocal music, perhaps easier to learn, because it's easy to write sort of predictable phrases. On the other hand, sometimes people, particularly, I think particularly congregational singing, people need to know where a tune is going.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they've got a sense of comfort. Whilst they don't know what the tune is, they've got an idea of where it's going, where the shape is.
Yeah.
So it's singable. And that's a skill, I think, that, well, you do learn. That's a bit of a beef I have about some of the contemporary songs. Some of the stuff is very, very good, but some you get halfway through a verse and it suddenly either stops or goes off at a tangent, and it's a shock because you don't know what's coming next. And it's all very well if you really learn the song, but for congregational singing, I think there's nothing, the structure of the old-fashioned hymns, proper good hymns of the church,
Yes.
they've got a structure and they've got a strength about them. And I think that gives the congregation some comfort when they're singing as well.
Yeah, and that's really what they were designed for. They were designed so that people could easily open a hymn book, and even if you'd never sung this tune before, by line 3 you knew what it was going to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's a challenge for our songwriters today, isn't it? That if we want our songs and hymns of the Salvation Army, if we want our congregations to fully engage with them, and for those songs to help us in our worship, then let us know. Use melodies that rise and fall a little bit and then repeat, because that's what all good melodies do, don't they? Repetition.
Yes. Yes.
And if you can say, I would say the same with songs. If you could say it in 3 minutes, why say it in 6?
Yeah.
Less is more. Hey, Yvonne, we've got one more or a couple of comments from Steve Whittingham. Hi, Steve. Glad that you've joined with us tonight. Steve says, good to see you and hear you both. Chris and I remember Yvonne and Ian from our days in WBC, especially Ian as a tutor, and he's enjoying listening. And he's got a question. Hearing your thoughts on composition and how you create it, what do you both think of the writing of Wilfred Heaton in both band and choral works? Have you any thoughts on Wilf Heaton's choral music? I've not heard a lot of it, Yvonne.
No, I have to confess I haven't. His brass music is more familiar to me, and his name has come up quite a bit actually over the recent months in various Zooms. people saying who are the good writers, and his name occurs time and time again. Yes, yeah. But I confess I'm not aware of anything that he's written chorally, I'm afraid.
He wrote an awful lot for chamber groups, strings and piano and harp and things. I've seen some of his music for that, but yeah, we perhaps know him in the Salvation Army more for his brass music. If any of you out there are brass players or writers, when you see a piece of Wilf Heaton's music on the stand, you know you're going to have something that's quality, right? That's what we've come to expect. That he is one of the masters, for me anyway. And we've been talking about less is more. If you want to see less is more in the flesh, go to a Wilf Heaton brass band score and find the piece Mercy's Light, for example, which begins with 4 players. Very, very unnerving for players to have to play that kind of music, but a brilliant, skillful musician, a genius, I think. So yeah, I think he gets a thumbs up from both of us, doesn't he, Yvonne?
Yeah, he does. Yes, yes.
Good. And how are we doing on your list there, Yvonne?
I'm doing all right, I think. Yes, I saw as well, looking at some of the YouTube stuff, that you've been over to the States quite a bit, guesting and doing summer camps and what have you. Yeah, how many times, what have you done over there? I mean, I saw you were invited, you were a guest composer at a big festival. New York Staff Band or somebody?
Yeah, that you might be talking about the Profile Night.
That's it. Yeah.
So that's a real honor, to be part of that. That's quite an institution. Gordon Ward started those almost 40 years ago now, I guess it would be. And while he was a divisional music director, he started this series. And I'm looking behind me because I've got a photo on the wall from that occasion. Number 35 I was. Profile Night 35, so that was in 2014.
Yeah.
So you basically go out there because they want to the Eastern Territory and that division, I guess, are just acknowledging and celebrating what God has been able to do through a particular composer. So when you go out there, you kind of you feel a little bit embarrassed, especially if you're British, because we have this way of sort of saying, well, I haven't really done much really, but we're very bashful, aren't we? But you have to sort of go, and I was very honored to be invited to go there, and it was wonderful to meet all those guys. And it was a New York Staff Band and the Greater New York Divisions youth band and youth chorus that were on, so it was a big night. Actually, I remember, because it was mid-March, there'd been a snowstorm the night before in some parts of Pennsylvania and south of New York, I think, and so that really impacted how many people could be there because they were snowed in. But it was a great night, really good occasion. In terms of other things, Leanne and myself have been out to, I think it's 3 music camps in the States, so they're all one. Each of those have been wonderful, and we've done one in Canada as well.
Great.
So I think they're the only things we've been to. Forgive me if there's something else that somebody else knows about and I can't remember, but I think it's been music camps basically. And you know what, I would say if you're a young person and you haven't been to a Salvation Army music camp, get yourself to one. There aren't any happening at the moment, but once they all come back online, because it's such an inspiring time. You've got the opportunity to meet with people of your own age and study scriptures, of course, and learn from some really inspirational musicians, and also people like me. So music camps are fantastic. And you know what, if you go as an adult to a music camp, you get really challenged, because kids aren't afraid to ask any question they want to ask, are they?
That's right.
It keeps you on your toes, and I love the energy that comes from young people. So they've been fantastic. Really honored to do
I had 2 interesting weekends a few years ago. I was invited to guest at the Zangers weekend in Holland, which is their territorial songster weekend, which was 2 lovely occasions. But the second one, apparently there were quite a few delegates who didn't speak English. So I had a translator.
Yeah.
And he was a guy with a great sense of humor. And every so often the delegates would sort of roar with laughter. And I think he's just translated something that I didn't say.
Yes,
But
yes.
that was very interesting because
Yeah.
they were singing all my stuff, which they had translated into Dutch and sent it to me. So I was trying to learn my own stuff in a foreign language.
Right.
That was
Wow. Wow.
a great experience.
Yeah, definitely. It does, as a musician, it just opens your eyes, doesn't it, to how in terms Salvation Army terms, how vast and varied our movement is in different countries, and yet we have this common thread of faith, but also music as well.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
I should imagine, Yvonne, brass band guys and girls have this. It comes with the territory. When it's just instrumental, it would sound the same in any country, but because any country, you don't need a language to understand it, only to read music. But with a song like yours, you're hearing it in with different words.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So does it make the song feel a bit different, do you think, when you hear it in another language?
It does sound a bit different. Yeah, it really does. And strange enough, I was looking for something on YouTube only about 3 or 4 days ago, and I came across If Your Presence being sung by an African brigade in French. I thought,
Wow.
goodness me. So I've heard it in French, I've heard it in Dutch, I've heard it in German.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it does change the tone a little bit. And of course, the English word, what you write in English doesn't translate exactly into
Right.
the language that it's being sung at.
Mm.
But when I went to Holland, it was, as you say, it was such a unifying experience, really. Although, they were learning the songs in their own language. We had such a thing in common, with our faith and wanting to, the desire to be the best musicians we could in music ministry for God.
Mm.
And there was just such a lovely bond, even though from some of the delegates, I couldn't speak their language, they couldn't speak English, but we communicated in a very comfortable way.
Mm.
Yeah, it was tremendous, really.
Fantastic.
Mm.
Well, Yvonne, we could just take a second out here to answer a couple more comments that have come in from different people. If you've just joined us, by the way, this is Yvonne Field and Martin Cordner talking about faith and music, and we're really glad that you're with us. We're encouraging you to leave a comment and say hello, and we'll give you a shout out, or if you have a question for Yvonne or myself, please do leave it in the comments and we'll get to that question. Yvonne, we've got a comment from Jeffrey Reed, Cambridge
Goodness.
gentleman, who says, good to see and hear Yvonne again after all these years.
Yes.
So you'll remember Jeffrey from your days.
Well, known Jeff since the day I was born.
Oh,
yeah.
Is that right? Okay, okay. Well, thanks, Jeff, for your comment. Derek Robertson says, once our songsters are back, we'll be looking at Yvonne's Beautiful Christ from 25(3). Does that mean?
Yeah, Sing to the Lord, volume 25, part 3.
Part 3.
Yeah.
And he says, Under His Wings is a regular in our repertoire as well.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for that, Derek. So there you go. If nobody else is going to be singing it, Yvonne, Derek's songsters will be tackling Beautiful Christ. So at least one songster is having a go at it. That'll give you some encouragement. When you write music, Yvonne, it's like sending it into a black hole sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I'm not talking about the music editorial department. Andrew's very good at getting back to us these days.
He is.
It wasn't always that way back in the day, was it? But
no, it wasn't. No.
What I mean is it's a sort of a isolating experience, and it only really comes alive when it's in the hands of a choral group or in a brass band.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And I always feel that once the song sort of goes out there, it's published and then it's sung by other people, it's no longer my song. You give it over to other people to interpret in their own way and use as they see fit, really. So I think it's quite a humbling experience. But going back to the comment that you just had about the song Beautiful Christ.
Yeah.
That is actually, do you remember the chorus, the old chorus in the songbook, Come Beautiful Christ, radiate thy beauty in me, which was always sung to the tune Home on the Range.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't sung that chorus for, I don't know, over 40 years. But I woke up one morning with the words in my mind, not the tune, just the words, which, you know, I thought this is very strange. But perhaps I need to do something with it. But I began to type it out on the computer and just literally took it apart word by word and phrase by phrase. And so a completely new arrangement came out of that. And it just begins with the words, come, come, come beautiful Christ. And then the climax is radiate, tis thee I adore, what can I ask more than to live for thee, beautiful Christ. So it's completely new arrangement of very old words. But I don't know why the words, well, obviously it was meant to be, but to suddenly wake up in the morning, think, goodness me, I haven't sung that for years.
Yeah, that's right. I think Home on the Range, that melody was one of the cornet solos I had to play at the over 60s when I was an officer's kid, aged about 8. So I have nightmares about the tune Home on the Range, but there you go.
I can imagine.
Yvonne, a couple more things. Well, I got some things I would like to ask you, because I think from a brass band angle, we look at things slightly differently, perhaps, to songwriters. So I've got a few questions for you. But we've also got Brian Clark says, Brian Clark is watching. Good. We're glad about that, Brian. We're glad.
Hi, Brian.
Thanks very much. So yeah, do leave us a question or a comment and we'll give you a shout out. So Yvonne, tell us about your in your musical journey. Who have you been your encouragers along the way? Who have the people been that have propelled you on to the next step and to fan your flame fan your gift, fan your flame, fan your gift into flame? Who are they?
Well, in the early days, it was one of the key people was Robert Redhead when he was head of music editorial. You know, I sent 2 or 3 things to him, and looking back now, they were obviously full of errors, and I didn't know about consecutive fifths at that time and all sorts of stuff. And he very graciously corrected my errors and gave suggestions. So although it was a sort of distant relationship because he was at headquarters and I was at the college, he was a great encourager as well. I used to I do listen to all sorts of music, and in the early days, people like Len Ballantine and Joy Webb, who would write lovely choral stuff. I took inspiration from them and the John Rutters. I listened to a lot of film score music because I just love film score music.
Yeah.
I love the textures, I love the tones, I love the way different instruments are used to create really images in your mind. And I always remember listening to John Barry's Out of Africa, and what a fabulous piece of music.
Yes.
Because he uses French horns quite a bit.
Yeah.
And people like that. So I've listened to a lot over the years, and I went through a stage of listening to an American songwriter, Michael W. Smith, who wrote a lot of stuff for Amy Grant. He writes some lovely songs, and he's done a beautiful instrumental Christmas album. So it wasn't so much actual personalities, there's a whole range of things. I just wanted to soak up all this information, learn from other people, you know, recognizing people's styles. And Carl Jenkins particularly, I mean, his modulations are just mind-blowing. They really are. Absolutely. So I've learned a lot from people like that, listening to their stuff and looking at their music and learning how they use music and how they do with crescendos and create moods. Lots of stuff like that. So there's a continual process of learning, isn't it? And I was saying last night, I've discovered a lovely composer. She's a young American woman. She's on YouTube, Elaine Hagenberg, and she's writing the most gorgeous choral music. She really is. She's on YouTube. She needs to be checked out. and she's written some beautiful stuff. So I'm into her at the moment, to be honest. In fact, I woke up I was awake about 5:30 this morning, made a cup of tea, snuck back into bed, put my tablet on with my ear things, and I had her stuff back to back. There's about
Right.
8 or 9 tracks, so I was just listening one after the other.
I think I might have to go and seek her out. Elaine Hardenberger, you say?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
I can remember us talking though, even that, when 20 years ago when we were at Stockport about film music, because we're both film music fans, aren't we? And
We
I
are.
remember,
Yes.
I think you told me James Horner was one of your
Oh, yes.
inspirations. He's no longer with us now, of course. James Horner, he died a few years ago.
Yeah,
But he'd come up with some terrific film music.
yeah.
Star Trek #2,
Yeah.
The Wrath of Khan. If you're a film music buff, anybody, get into that piece of music. Stunning music from James Horner. But film music plays a big part in our world today. It's what I've grown up with in my particular generation. I think people know my story with growing up with Star Wars. The poster behind me. It's been my bread and butter. It's what I've listened to, and today I think it's the classical music of today. But anyway, that's probably a story for another day.
But it's interesting because on Classic FM now they're playing more film score music, aren't they? It's suddenly become acceptable, and they've actually played several times the theme tune from Gone with the Wind, the very old film. Yeah. It's found.
That's by a guy called Max Steiner. I think he was Swiss or Austrian, and on one of the Sky TV channels that we get over here in the UK, they show a series, a night at the movies or something, and it's basically the Vienna Symphony Orchestra, and they begin their concerts with the Taurus theme from Gone with the Wind by Max Steiner. That's how they open every one of their, and that gorgeous violin solo that just soars up the octave. And
beautiful, isn't it?
It is beautiful, stunning.
Of course, one of the best pieces is Where Eagles Dare. That's a oh, we're on a roll here, Martin.
We are, aren't we? Yeah. Where Eagles Dare, fantastic. So what else could I ask you? Well, what was your first song published then? How far back do we have to go for that?
Go back to 1990. What was it? About 4 or 5. It was Christ in Me. That was the first one that was published.
Right, yeah.
That was before it was Sing to the Lord. It was when still Musical Salvationist, I think.
Yeah. It was easier for people like me in 94 because they had dates on them. When you look up Sing to the Lord now, it doesn't have a date on it. I would like our music editorial to put a date somehow in the numbering system so we know, when it was published. But anyway, so
it does. When you see the music inside the cover, down on the bottom, I think it says the year or something. But no, it's changed. It's now volume and part 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But was Christ in Me from your time at the college?
It was. It was, yes. And it was written, I was asked about it last night on the Zoom I did. It was written for a small group of cadets to sing one Sunday morning on what they call their spiritual days. I've always liked Colin Fairclough's words. And so when I was asked to put together this small group to sing, just thought, well, I wonder if I can do anything with it. And that music was created, and it was only for that small group to sing, but the music found its way to music editorial, and then I was quite surprised, very surprised to see it published, and then to realize that people liked it. But I think that's one of those songs where it's less is more, because thinking back now, the accompaniment and the vocals are quite simple, although the vocals go up to a top G at the end. It's quite simple. I
think you're right. And going back to what you were saying earlier, Yvonne, about knowing where the shape of a melody is going to land, I think that's what you've been able to provide in that song and a lot of your songs. We know where it's going to go. So some people might think that's boring and predictable, but actually in worship, in our setting, it's of immense value, isn't it? Because it means that more we can engage with it, we can relate to it without having the distraction of, why did it go down when I thought it was going to go up, and but that's a lovely song. I do remember the top G's when I've had to sing it. The sopranos, I've been on the men's section, of course, but yeah, it's got a big, powerful ending.
It
And I
has,
think
yes.
you put in a little motif which you quite often put in. Bum bum bum. Has anybody
Yeah.
asked you about that before?
Yeah, well, somebody asked me last night that they'd heard that the last two notes were supposed to depict the blood of Jesus falling on the crucifixion. Is that right? I said, no, they're just written because I like them.
Yeah. Hey,
when you put in your note that there were one or two motives that I use, I thought, I bet I know what he's going to ask me, because I use slent quite a lot as well in my songs. Did you notice that?
I hadn't noticed that, no, but we'll talk about keys in a minute, because I think you're definitely a C major fan, but I'm glad to get to that in a second. We've got a comment from Leanne. It must be from when we were talking about film music. She says The West Wing.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes.
20
President
years
Bartlett.
ago, you were a big fan of that, and so was Leanne.
That's right.
And the music by Snuffy Walden.
Yes, yes, I do.
You made us, I think, or on your recommendation, go and buy his CD. So somewhere on my shelves here, I've got a WG Snuffy Walden CD. Yeah, but that's a great soundtrack to the West Wing, isn't it?
It is.
And a very clever, very witty program as well.
Yeah, superb. Yeah.
So your first song then, 94, we've said. How many have you submitted? I think I counted 38 published.
38 published, which I'd never really counted. There's a couple they've got which have never been published, but you can't expect everything to be published.
No, that's right.
But it means that I could circulate them privately. But I must admit, music editorial have been very kind, and nearly everything I send up is published, even if it's several years later. That they published not very many, only 2 or 3 years ago, Psalm 117. They sent me the book. I looked at it and saw my name. I think, what? And then I suddenly realized I wrote that years ago. So it had been sat in the back of a file somewhere or other. But that was another one. If I'd done it now, I would have pared it down. I would have simplified it.
Yeah, time is a cruel gift in a way, because it gives you the ability to look back and make you wish you'd done things differently, doesn't it? But some composers and maybe songwriters, I don't know, but I think of RSA, God rest his soul, who went back to some of his works. And I was listening to Ratcliffe Highway recently with a xylophone part played to it, and I think he must have gone back, because in 1978 you wouldn't have written a xylophone part for a brass band. But composers do sometimes go back to their works, and they do give them, maybe modernize them or freshen them up in some way. But we don't always get that opportunity, do we, once it's given over?
No, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I just thought a couple of days ago, actually, thinking about the very, very first little melody that I wrote, that I was talking about. I didn't keep the manuscript, and I could kick myself for it. I can't remember what the verse was, but I do remember the introduction, the chorus. And I said to Ian, I might actually have a go at that and see if I can make a new song out of it, because the idea is still there. Christmas one, so perhaps that's going to be my next little project. My husband's, I think he wants me to ask you something. Oh no, he doesn't. No, sorry, forget that.
That's all right, just tell him I'm not offended. That's fine.
No, Martin's not offended. You were asking his favorite pieces. Oh yeah, Ian wants to know what your favorite piece is, that you've written.
The favorite piece that I've written? Oh my goodness. I don't really, with all of them, I would like to have done them differently. But there are some which I think have just been embraced a little more than others. And I guess some recent ones which I think have really worked from my point of view and work from the audience's point of view and from the band's point of view, have been a piece called The Adventurers, which was really good. I say it was really good. What I mean is it just seemed to come at the right time and be accepted. And then Hot on the Heels of Boundless, I did a little medley of stuff that I had written for Boundless and called the medley Boundless Spirit, which a lot of bands have been asking for, and I think I had a request for it yesterday. So that is a piece I'm quite pleased with. I don't really have a favourite, but there are a few which I wouldn't mind if I did go to the grave tomorrow and people remembered me for those. I wouldn't mind. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
So,
I know. You mentioned in conversation about writing in a favourite key. I do like C major, but I do like, if I'm writing a sort of more reflective, prayerful, meditative type of song, I like A flat. A flat is a very warm, mellow key.
yeah.
And if it's going to be a big sprite song, it's got to be a D major. It's got to
Right.
be.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that would be my follow-on question. What's your rationale behind A flat? I mean, A flat has a lot of the note C in it, which is a bright sounding note. So it isn't maybe as mellow as some other keys, but it's a strong key, isn't it? A flat.
Yeah. Yes.
Does the key come into your thinking for how you want a song to sound?
Yes, it does. Yes,
Right.
sometimes I'll change it. The one I've just finished. It was a very bright song. I've just sent it to Andrew Blythe, and he liked it. He's going to put it forward for consideration for publication. And I actually started that in D, but then I think of the vocal range, and I brought it back down. I think it's just to C. So it's a bit kinder, particularly to the tenors, because over the years I've had one or two comments from the tenors that I write too many top Fs for the tenors. So
Right.
I'm learning to be kinder to tenors. But yeah, so occasionally a key signature has had to be changed. But usually when I start, yeah, if I know what kind of song I think it's going to be, I've got my favorite keys which I'll try it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like flats. I actually,
Yeah.
although I like writing in D major, I actually detest sharps, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So it is a factor, and of course, the shape, how high the melody is going to go, is going to sometimes mean you're going to need to make adjustments. Is
Yeah,
that right?
I mean, if I'm writing for sales songsters, we've got some excellent sopranos who can hit the top A without blinking. But if you're writing sort of for your perhaps a regular core brigade,
Yeah.
even a top G sometimes, if there's a top G, I'll put it in as an optional note. So that there's probably a D, depending if it's in C major, there's a E or a C. If it's in G major, there's a D or a B that everybody can sing, and then you cover the G in the accompaniment, so you still got the big sound. But you have to be aware of people's range as well. If
Well,
you're writing,
that follows on nicely to the last thing I wanted to ask you tonight, Yvonne, which is, I suppose, touches on the subject of accessibility. You know, when at the end of the day, people have to sing your songs, or you're hoping that people will sing your songs. So, where is the balance for you between you writing what's on your heart and putting it all down, and you thinking, well, hold on a minute, people have got to sing this? You know, what do you tend to do? Do you have first in your mind that it's going to be sung by people, so I'm going to make it accessible from the get-go? Or are you how do you wrestle that balance? How do you resolve that balance?
I tend these days to usually have in mind that hopefully it'll be for wider use. So tend to be a little bit more restrained. And in the accompaniment as well. I mean, obviously music editorial now producing excellent backing tracks, which has made such a huge difference.
Yeah.
But so a bit more restrained in that, but every so often you tend to, right, let's go for it and do a biggie. And I think, well, if it's only sung by Sale and one or two others, that's okay. There's been a couple, it was played last night, Radiant Lord, which is an Easter one, which is a big one, very high, quite demanding, with a very demanding piano part. I just wanted to write a big celebration Easter song, so I went for it. It has been published, but I don't think many people sing it because it is too demanding.
Okay.
But generally, I tend to think, well, I hope this will be attractive and useful to other groups that can sing it, you know, whether they be small groups or more accomplished brigades at all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Yvonne, we're coming to the end of our time now, and thanks very much for answering those questions. It's been really fascinating talking to you and listening to little insights into your process for writing songs. And from me, and I'm sure everybody watching would join it with me in saying we hope there's lots more to come, Yvonne. So thank you for blessing us with your music, and we just hope and pray you'll be obedient to whatever it is that God's trying to say through you, and because that's what he wants to say to us, isn't it? That's what music can do to enable us to hear the voice of God. Great.
Well, thank you. It's been great to chat to you, Martin, as well, and you and Leanne are doing a great job for your Sunday ministry online. We really enjoy it. It's a blessing. So thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for that, Yvonne. Yeah, don't forget everybody, as Yvonne has just snuck in there, you can tune into Cambridge Citadel's Sunday worship, Camza Church. Look for it on YouTube. We'd love to see you there. Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight, and thanks for your questions. And I have got an announcement about who I'm going to be interviewing next time, in 2 weeks' time. So let me just see if I can press the right button. Are you still there, Yvonne? I hope I haven't made you go away.
Yes, no, I'm still here.
Need to like share my screen or something. It's so complicated. Here we go. So in 2 weeks' time, on the 4th of August, I'm going to be speaking to Paul Sharman. So it's composer meets composer, and Paul and I go back 20, 30 years, I think. I know neither of us look old enough for that to be true, but it is true. And we'll be catching up on old times, no doubt, and talking about faith and music. Although I'm going to give it a caveat, which is hopefully it will be on the 4th of August, because I am going to be I'm going to be on holiday, and I've just heard that the place we're going on holiday doesn't have very good Wi-Fi. So if we can't live stream on the 4th, we'll rearrange it, everybody. But we hope you can join on the 4th. Tune in. We'll put a message out there whether or not it's happening or not. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll catch you next